Welcome back to I Don't Have Time to Read. Today we're diving deep into Madeline Miller's Circe. It's a pretty captivating reimagining of a classic myth.
Right.
You might know Circe as that sorceress from Homer's Odyssey. But this time we're going to be experiencing the story through her eyes.
Yeah, and what's so captivating about Miller's approach is that she takes a figure who is so often, portrayed as a villain or a temptress, and she gives her depth and vulnerability, and most importantly, agency.
Yeah.
So we're going to be exploring her transformation from what seems like a pretty insignificant nymph to a powerful, independent witch. We'll be delving into, the intricacies of her relationships and the moral grays that she has to kind of navigate.
Exactly. So to really understand Circe's journey, we got to start at the beginning. She's born into a world where nymphs, these nature spirits, right, they're seen as beautiful but lacking real power. Kind of like the pretty but powerless daughters of the gods.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And she's born into the halls of Oceanos.
Right.
A Titan, which is important to remember because the Titans are the older generation of gods and they often clash with the Olympians like Zeus.
Right.
Her father is Helios, the sun god, known for his fiery temper. But Circe herself initially is described as almost unremarkable. Her own siblings even call her voice screechy as an owl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's almost like she's trying to find her place in this world of powerful and often cruel deities.
Yeah.
And then she has this encounter with Prometheus,
Yeah.
the Titan who gifted fire to humanity and is being eternally punished by Zeus for it.
Yeah.
What do you make of this meeting?
Well, this encounter is pivotal. Here's this powerful Titan in agony, and Circe, this young nymph, she defies the unspoken rules and she offers him nectar.
Right.
It's an act of rebellion, yes, but also an act of empathy, a quality we don't often see in the gods.
That's true.
This defiance, this small act of kindness, it sparks something in Circe. It's the beginning of her questioning the established order.
Yeah. It's like she's waking up to the injustices around her and realizing that she has the power to choose a different path. Which leads us to her exploration of witchcraft. How does she embark on this journey?
Well, remember, witchcraft isn't something that's taught openly, especially not to nymphs.
Right.
Circe has to figure it out on her own.
Right.
It's trial and error, burning her fingers, concocting strange potions. There's this sense of her really having to work for it, to earn her power.
So no shortcuts to becoming a powerful sorceress. And her first significant act of magic is transforming the nymph Scylla, driven by a mix of love for Glaucus and jealousy towards Scylla. But this act isn't just a love triangle drama, is it?
Not at all. This transformation is about so much more. It reveals Circe's conflicting emotions, her desire to assert her power, but also her naivete about the consequences. She's stepping into her power, but she's also making a mistake with repercussions that will shape her future.
And those repercussions lead to her exile to the island of Aiaia, right?
Right.
What's interesting is that this punishment becomes a sort of sanctuary for her.
Exactly. Aiaia becomes the place where Circe truly comes into her own. Away from the judgment and the expectations of her family, she can explore her powers without limitations, becoming one with the island and its magic.
Wow.
It's a period of oscillation, yes, but also one of immense growth and self-discovery.
It's almost like she needs this space, this time away to understand who she really is. And on Aiaia, she has all these encounters that shape her. Let's talk about Hermes, the messenger god who brings news from the outside world. What does he represent for Circe?
Well, Hermes acts as a bridge between Circe and the world she's been banished from. He brings news of Glaucus,
Right.
the fisherman that she transformed into a god, and his marriage to Scylla, which is a stark reminder of the consequences of her past actions.
Oh, wow.
It forces her to confront her guilt and regret, adding another layer to her isolation.
So even in isolation, she's not entirely free from the past. And then, of course, we have the arrival of Odysseus and his men.
Yes, this is where Miller challenges the traditional narrative. Yes, Circe turns Odysseus's men into pigs, but it's not a simple act of malice. Think about it. She's a woman alone on this island. And these men, known for their conquests, they land on her shores. It's a way for her to protect herself, to establish boundaries in a world where men often see women as possessions.
That's such an important point. It completely shifts our understanding of this classic scene. And what follows is a relationship with Odysseus that's far more nuanced than the traditional portrayal, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They share stories, they connect on an intellectual and emotional level, and there's a mutual respect that blossoms. It's a departure from the idea of Circe as a temptress holding Odysseus captive. This is a relationship between equals, a meeting of minds.
So it's not just about magic and monsters. It's about human connection, even amidst the fantastical. But Odysseus eventually leaves. And that departure leaves a profound mark on Circe.
It does. With Odysseus, Circe experiences a kind of connection she hasn't known before. His departure isn't just about, being alone on the island. It's about the loss of that specific intimacy, that intellectual companionship. It deepens her longing for a life beyond Aiaia, a life that includes, meaningful connection.
It's a new kind of loneliness, one born from knowing what she's missing. And this is where we see Circe at a crossroads.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Madeline Miller's Circe. Last time we left off with Circe kind of wrestling with this profound sense of loneliness after Odysseus leaves Aiaia. She's had this taste of genuine connection, and now she's back to, feeling isolated. So where does she go from here?
Well, you have to remember that, while she is isolated, she's not exactly alone. Hermes visits regularly, and sometimes other figures from the outside world find their way to her shores. One of the most significant is Medea, another powerful sorceress, and interestingly enough, Circe's niece. Oh, right, Medea. I had forgotten about that connection. For those who need a refresher, she's the daughter of Aeetes, the king of Colchis, who we met briefly in the first part. What brings her to Aiaia?
Well, Medea arrives seeking refuge after betraying her own family to help Jason and the Argonauts steal the Golden Fleece. She's known for her passionate, some might say ruthless nature. Think of her as a different kind of female power driven by ambition and, let's be honest, a thirst for revenge.
So how does this meeting of two powerful sorceresses play out?
Their dynamic is fascinating. There's a sense of understanding, even kinship between them. They're both women who have been underestimated and ostracized by, the patriarchal world of the gods. But there's also an element of rivalry.
What causes the rivalry?
Well, Medea challenges Circe's choices. She questions her decision to help Odysseus, even suggesting that it was driven by a desire for male approval. You can almost see her holding a mirror up to Circe, forcing her to confront the ways she might still be seeking validation from men.
So even as she grows in power, Circe is still wrestling with those ingrained societal expectations. It makes you wonder how much we internalize those expectations, even when we think we're breaking free from them. And in the midst of all this, Circe becomes a mother. So how does motherhood impact her?
This is where we see a profound shift. She gives birth to Telegonus, fathered by Odysseus, a child who was prophesied to kill his own father. You can imagine the weight of that knowledge, the fear it must instill. But even more powerful than that fear is her love for Telegonus.
It seems like this love unlocks a new dimension of her power. She's no longer just protecting herself. She's fighting for her son's survival against fate itself. It's even more striking when you consider how uncertain she was in her early years.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about magical duels with monsters. Remember, she confronts Poseidon, the god of the sea, to protect Telegonus. This is a woman who was once terrified of her own siblings, and now she's staring down one of the most powerful gods in the pantheon. That's a serious evolution.
She is not playing around anymore. She even makes the difficult decision to alter her own appearance. Tell me more about that.
Well, she uses her magic to make herself appear older, less beautiful, to deflect attention away from Telegonus. It's a heartbreaking act of self-sacrifice. Remember, beauty for nymphs is often tied to their power and status.
So she's willing to diminish herself in the eyes of the world to protect her son. It makes you think about what we're willing to sacrifice for those we love and how motherhood can redefine our priorities. But despite her best efforts, the prophecy looms large, doesn't it?
Tragically, yes. Telegonus, driven by a longing to meet his father, sets sail for Ithaca. He ends up accidentally killing Odysseus in a confrontation, fulfilling the very prophecy Circe tried so hard to avoid. It's a gut-wrenching reminder of the power of fate and the unintended consequences of even our best intentions.
It's a classic Greek tragedy in a way. You try to outrun fate, and it catches up to you in the most unexpected, heartbreaking way. Telegonus returns to Aiaia bearing the weight of this terrible deed. What happens next?
This is where Penelope, Odysseus's wife, and Telemachus, his son, arrive on Aiaia. They've come seeking answers about Odysseus's disappearance. Imagine the emotional weight of this encounter. Circe has to tell them the truth not only about what happened to Odysseus, but also about her own relationship with him and the existence of Telegonus.
It must be a tangled web of grief, anger, and confusion. How does Circe handle such a delicate situation?
She chooses honesty, which is a huge step for someone who spent so much of her life hiding her true self. This choice reflects her growth. She recognizes the importance of truth even if it's painful. The revelations lead to a complex mix of emotions, but ultimately there's a sense of forgiveness and reconciliation that emerges.
So even in the face of tragedy, there's a glimmer of hope for healing and understanding.
Yeah.
It makes you think about our own capacity for forgiveness, for moving forward, even when the past is full of pain. Where does this newfound peace lead Circe? What does she do next?
Well, that brings us to her final transformation, and a decision that will change everything. To explore that and wrap up our deep dive into Circe, you'll have to join us for the final part of our exploration.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Circe. Last time we left off, Circe had revealed the truth about Odysseus to Penelope and Telemachus, and there was this kind of fragile peace that had settled over Aiaia. But her journey isn't over yet. In fact, it's about to take another surprising turn.
That's right. This final part of her story is perhaps the most profound. It's where she makes a decision that reflects everything she's learned and ultimately shapes her destiny.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is this life-altering choice?
She decides to relinquish her immortality.
Wow, that's a big one. She's choosing mortality, a finite lifespan after living for centuries as a goddess. What leads her to such a monumental decision?
It's a culmination of everything she's experienced. Think about it. She's tasted the bitterness of isolation, the fleeting nature of connection with the immortal gods, and the depth of love and loss that comes with being human.
You're right, she's seen firsthand that immortality doesn't equal happiness. It doesn't guarantee connection or purpose.
Exactly. Her time on Aiaia, her relationships with mortals like Odysseus, and her own son have shown her the beauty of a life lived fully, even if it ends.
It's like she's finally understanding that true connection, true vulnerability can only exist when there's something at stake. If you live forever with no fear of loss, can you truly appreciate what you have?
That's a profound question, and one that Circe seems to be grappling with. Her choice speaks volumes about her growth. She's no longer seeking power or control, but something far more valuable. A life filled with meaning, love, and connection, even if it means facing the inevitability of death.
It's a powerful message about what it truly means to be alive. To embrace the full spectrum of human experience, the joy and the sorrow, the love and the loss, knowing that it's all temporary. But before she makes this final transformation, there's one more significant act she undertakes.
You're referring to Scylla, right? The nymph she transformed into a monster all those years ago?
Yes. Does Circe finally find a way to undo what she did?
She does, using the venom from Trigon, a monstrous stingray she'd been forced to kill by Poseidon. Circe transforms Scylla into stone, finally freeing those who sail the straits from her terror.
It's such a powerful act of redemption. She's using the very power she gained through trial and error through her own struggles to right a past wrong. It speaks to her growth, her compassion, and her understanding of the consequences of her actions.
It's a beautiful, full-circle moment. She started her journey by making a rash decision driven by jealousy and insecurity. Now she's using her power with wisdom and empathy, seeking to heal rather than harm.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. What are your final thoughts on Circe's story? What should our listeners who might be intrigued by this retelling pay attention to as they explore Madeline Miller's Circe?
For me, Circe is about so much more than just a sorceress and her magic. It's about female agency, about finding your voice and claiming your power in a world that tries to silence you. It's about the complexities of love, loss, and forgiveness. And ultimately, it's a story about finding your place in the world, even if that world is full of gods and monsters.
Beautifully said. This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the depth and richness of Circe's story.
It's been a pleasure discussing it with you.
And for our listeners, if you're looking for a story that will challenge your perceptions of classic myths, that will make you think about power choice and the human condition in a new light, definitely check out Madeline Miller's Circe. It's a beautifully written, thought-provoking novel that will stay with you long after you finish it. And be sure to join us next time on I Don't Have Time to Read, when we'll explore another captivating story. Until then, happy reading.